और मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
Assalamu alaikum, respected brothers and sisters. Today, I want to reflect on two powerful du'as from the Sahifa Sajjadiyah. One for seeking forgiveness and the other for seeking protection from hardships. These du'as, though short, carry immense wisdom and relevance for our daily lives. The first du'a is du'a 16, the importance of seeking forgiveness. This supplication reminds us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is not something we can earn solely through our deeds. Rather, it is a divine gift. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam teaches us humility, acknowledging that we are constantly in need of Allah's forgiveness. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam the most perfect of human beings, would seek Allah's forgiveness multiple times a day. So where do we stand? Seeking forgiveness purifies our hearts, strengthens our relationships with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and opens the door of blessings. When we repent sincerely, we not only erase our past sins, but also prevent future misguidance. In this essence, this dua is a lifeline, and it keeps us spiritually aware and hopeful in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, no matter how many times we falter. The second dua I would like to speak about is dua 23, which is about the importance of seeking protection from hardships. Life is unpredictable, and we experience moments of ease along with moments of hardship and difficulties, such as financial struggles, health issues, and emotional pain or unexpected trials. This supplication teaches us to seek refuge in Allah and from all forms of hardship. The phrase, the gloating of enemies, shows us that our struggles can become a source of joy for those who wish us harm. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection, we remain safe from their ill intentions and so on. This dua teaches us reliance on Allah. No matter how strong we think we are, life can humble us in an instant. But with sincere prayer, we shift our focus from fear to faith. And we trust in Allah to guide us through difficult times. Please say aloud salawat.
MashaAllah, great job our young sister Isha Lakwi. For her and her family, sehat salamti, khair wa barakat. Please recite aloud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At this time, I would like to request Hujjatul Islam Maulana Rizwan Arastu to please come forward and address the community. Please welcome him with a loud salawat. And
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقل اعملوا فسيرى الله عملكم ورسوله والمؤمنون وستردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Inshallah, tonight will be the last lecture in this series that I've been delivering to you. I have a couple of loose ends I want to tie up. There is a hadith that's not really related to our nightly topic, but it's related to the Jum'ah khutbah I gave yesterday? Yes, yesterday, about Salatul Ayat. And this is a hadith, I think it's relevant because I Well, let me read the hadith first, I'll tell you why it's relevant. This is about Salatul Ayat, and it says that in كسفت الشمس في زمان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فصلى بالناس ركعتين وطول حتى غشي على بعض القوم. Salatul Ayat, the ayah happened, Rasulullah led the prayer, and he lengthened the prayer so much that some of the people in the gathering fainted. طول حتى غشي على بعض القوم. Some of them, they fainted. So this, we talked in the Jumu'ah khutbah about kind of the very stark difference between our attitude towards Salatul Ayat and maybe Salah generally, that we're trying to just check it off and say, I did it, so we do it as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, so that we can get on to other things. And the contrast is with the hadith, with the sunnah of the Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt, where they themselves would lengthen it and encourages us to lengthen it. So our prayer also, it's recommended that when we pray our fara'id prayers on a daily basis, the Fajr prayer with our Fatiha, we should recite some of the mutawwalat, some of the longer surahs. With Dhuhr and Isha, medium-sized surahs, and with, with Fajr, long surahs, with Dhuhr and Isha, correct, with Dhuhr and Isha, the medium-sized prayers, and with Asr and Maghrib, the shorter-sized prayers, shorter-sized surahs. So longer, medium, and short. We also have this recommendation that the Imam should kind of lighten his prayer, do takhfif of his prayer, based on the capacity of the congregants. So he looks at the weakest of the jama'ah and keeps them in mind as he leads the prayer, so he doesn't fatigue them or cause trouble. Not only fatigue, but also, for instance, say it's in the middle of a work day and you have a masjid that's in the middle of the bazaar. Back in Muslim countries, you'd have the bazaar masjid. So everyone's got to get back to work, time is money. And so it doesn't make sense at that point, Dhuhr prayer, to elongate your prayer. People need to do their duty and also get back. Both are wajib. And so in that context, it makes a lot of sense, even though everyone's strong and in their prime and prime earners, but they need to get back to their work, and that it makes very good sense that the person should not only keep in mind the physical ability, but the needs of the congregants. So this creates a little bit of tension in our communities and our congregation. Typically, amongst the Shia, we tend to kind of have a race for the bottom to see how short, how fast we can do our prayer. The shorter surah, the better. And anything longer than like half a page is really long and really tries our patience. And Mawlana, next time, please, this is too much. I'm really tired, I almost fainted, that kind of attitude often comes to my ears either directly or indirectly. I've been scolded. I was a guest speaker last year in California, and the first night, or second night, third night, a community member came up and scolded me. With all due respect, she said, right, which is always a bad sign because there's a lot of disrespect coming. And she scolded me for 5 minutes about how this is too long. We need to, Shaykh Faizi talks about this a lot, we need to build our capacity. He talks about it financially. We need to train ourselves, become generous, give, all these different causes. He provides opportunities and he kind of pushes us. The way Allah pushes us through bala to expand our capacity, do more, give more. And with prayer also, with the length of the prayer, the length of the surahs, we need to build our capacity. We are unreasonable in our expectation that the prayer should be always with Surah Al-Ikhlas and Surah Al-Asr and Surah Al-Kawthar, that these should be the standard fare. Those are wonderful surahs, great thawab in them, but there are so many surahs. And we're notorious for being weak in memorization, being short in our prayers, and this is not a good thing. This is not the sunnah of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. They were very much, diligent, not only in, of course, knowing it and speaking it, but also encouraging people to do the same. And so that's something we need to build in ourselves, and we shouldn't be so notorious for this. To the extent that I've had people in Bayt al-Ilm itself, after a prayer, they have said, "Are you Sunni?" They've asked if I was Sunni because why else would you be reciting these other surahs that we've never heard of before? I've heard rumors that people have joked and said that Shayk Rizwan recites Salat al-Tarawih at Bayt al-Ilm. Right? So this is ridiculous. It should not be that we're so notorious for that kind of a prayer that if you read a surah that's a page long, people think that there's no way this could be a Shi'i. He both read a long surah and he used tajweed, definitely not a Shi'i. That should not be what we're about, our hallmark. That we have bad qira'ah, weak recitation, that should not be our hallmark. Yeah, so build our capacity, be patient, memorize better, memorize more. Don't expect your kids to go to Quran Academy and memorize, but I'm too old to learn. You have to learn too. You have to memorize too. Show your kids how to do it by you making your best effort to do it. Memorize more. Recite long surahs in your prayers at home. Be, of course, sensitive, conscious of people. If it's a rushed time and everyone needs to get somewhere, that's not a good time to push the envelope and have a long prayer. Be sensitive to the needs of your family, community, whatever the context is. But that shouldn't become an excuse that we then reduce our prayer so much. And then we have a very quick prayer, and then we spend 20 minutes socializing afterwards, all standing up. The same people who are saying, I'm about to faint, are then standing up for 15, 20 minutes gup-shupping. Right? That's hujjah against them, that it was not the prayer that was a problem. It was your own lack of capacity to bear the this ibadah and actually maybe even benefit from it. Once you develop capacity, then you actually benefit from it. You can now, having a repertoire is really great. If you have a repertoire of surahs, repertoire of du'as for qunut, now you have so much to choose from and you can actually customize it to what you're feeling, what the occasion is. I try sometimes to recite a surah that is linked to my lecture, or a qunut that's linked to my lecture. And even if I didn't have it memorized before, I'll spend time, I'll memorize it so I can recite it in the qunut, because as I'm studying it, I want to learn it too. I don't want to just preach it. I try very hard to first practice and inculcate whatever I'm talking about in myself before I preach it. I don't preach just for preaching's sake. Right? So if I'm going to say that's a good dua, I better memorize it first. Let me say it in the qunut and practice it and make sure it's part of me now, part of my repertoire. And then it links to the lecture and maybe something that's going on in the environment, something that's going on in the news, so that we can be in touch with, make our prayer in touch with our life. Right? It's supposed to be very much integrated. That's the basis, that's the springboard from which we enter into our life with renewed inspiration, guidance, all of this. So we need to make the prayer more linked to our lives by this. Surahs and du'as, having a wide repertoire helps us to do that better. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa alihi. Today, the last part of what I want to share with you as we are talking about these events of the hereafter is the sirat. All right, so we've been talking since we talked about the resurrection with the second blow of the trumpet. We talked about the tatayur al-kutub, the opening up of the book of deeds. We talked about the mizan and the weighing of deeds yesterday. And one of the things that we will have to face is the crossing of the sirat. Now in the Quran, we have the mention of sirat mustaqim. Obviously in Fatiha, ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. In Surah Al-An'am, we have وَأَنَّ هَذِي صِرَاطًا مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ. So we have this mention of sirat mustaqim in many places. Typically we understand that sirat that we're asking for guidance on to be a path in this life. Guide me on the sirat mustaqim. We're not thinking of the sirat in the day of judgment. We're thinking of the sirat, which is the path through life, which is the deen of Islam, which is righteousness, which is truth. All those principles are the ones that guide us on this path, the sirat mustaqim. And we're asking Allah to get us on the path, and once we are inshallah on the path, then to keep us on the path. But this sirat is actually the same as the sirat in the hereafter. There are two, you could say two sides of the same coin. The sirat mustaqim that we are trying to traverse by being Muslim, is the exact same sirat that we will be called on to cross on the Day of Judgment. The manifestation of that sirat here is deen, the deen, inna ad-deena 'inda Allahi al-Islam. And the manifestation of that sirat in the hereafter is this, you could say a bridge. The Quran doesn't use that term jisr, but in ahadith that word is used. Jisr is a bridge. So jisr sirat, or in Urdu also you say pul sirat. Right? So that word is used, taken from ahadith, but the Quran doesn't mention the idea of a bridge as a metaphor for this path. Let me share this one hadith with you that helps us to see that unity of the two sirats. This is from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. So one of his companions, Mufaddal ibn Umar, asks him about the sirat. The Imam says, هو الطريق إلى معرفة الله عز وجل. He says it's the pathway to knowledge of God. Then he says, وَهُمَا صِرَاطَانِ. There are actually two paths. When we say sirat, we're talking about two paths. صِرَاطٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَصِرَاطٌ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. One is in this life, one is in the hereafter. فأما الصراط الذي في الدنيا فهو الإمام المفروض طاعة من عرفه في الدنيا واقتدى بهداه مر على الصراط الذي هو جسر جهنم في الآخرة. He says that the first of these two sirats is the one in the dunya. This is, here in this hadith, he says it's epitomized by obedience to the imam, whose obedience is obligatory on you. Al-imam al-muftarad al-ta'a. And so if you know your imam, and then if you follow in his path, then that is the prerequisite for, on the Day of Judgment, being able to cross over that jisru jahannam, that bridge over hell, which is the sirat that is there in the hereafter on the Day of Judgment. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَعْرِفُ فِي الدُّنْيَا زَلَّتْ قَدَمُهُ عَنِ الصِّرَاطِ فِي الْآخِرَةِ فَتَرَدَّى فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ. Anybody who doesn't know the imam, then obviously also can't follow the imam because he doesn't know who to follow and what to follow. And then that person, because he's misguided and has deviated from the sirat or never found the sirat in the dunya, then his feet will slip on the sirat in the hereafter, and he'll slip into hellfire. He'll tumble into hellfire. So when we talk about the sirat in the hereafter, we should just back up and let's talk about the sirat in the dunya. This sirat mustaqim that we are asking constantly for guidance to and guidance on, ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, it is characterized in a hadith as different things, and they're not mutually exclusive, they're all the same thing. Sometimes the sirat mustaqim is equated with kitabullah, so the Quran is sirat mustaqim, or the path of the prophets, generally speaking, all that they taught, this is sirat mustaqim. Right? There's no contradiction, those are one and the same thing. Sometimes it's referred to as the sunnah of the prophet, sometimes it's referred to as Imam Ali alayhi salam, that he is sirat mustaqim. Yabna sirat al-mustaqim. Dua nudba, we call Imam al-Hujjah, the son, the heir of as-sirat al-mustaqim, who is Amir al-Mu'mineen. This also, sometimes we have to be sensitive to this. When we're speaking to Sunnis, speaking around Sunnis, our rhetoric sometimes belies a misplaced kind of devotion to Imam Ali that somehow ignores Rasulullah. So in our beliefs, of course, we know that Rasulullah is the best, he's the greatest, and Imam Ali is Abdun min Abidi Muhammad. He's a servant of Muhammad. He himself introduces himself like that. That he's, whatever he is, Rasulullah is that in the best capacity, and Imam Ali is following in Rasulullah's footsteps. So that's clear in our aqidah, but it doesn't always manifest itself in our rhetoric. And even the hadith, because they're trying to distinguish from the path of Ahlul Sunnah and other deviant paths that have left Ahlul Bayt, of course the ahadith are also going to put a lot of emphasis on Amir al-Mu'mineen because he is the sole pathway to Rasulullah. But the implicit part, which needs, I think, to be said out loud more, we have to say it out loud more because of the Sunnis around us and the Sunnis we're engaged with, is that Imam Ali is so important because he is the key and the link to Rasulullah. He is Bab Madinatul Ilm. He's not the Madinatul Ilm itself, right? But we tend to put so much emphasis, and our rhetoric is all who's the best of creation, we'll say Amir al-Mu'mineen and Rasulullah. Like, almost like an add-on, we'll put him there just because we feel a little bit bad for leaving him out, and that's definitely a wrong rhetoric. We need to always put Rasulullah first, and then make it clear in our mind, of course, in our beliefs, but then in our rhetoric also, that Amir al-Mu'mineen is a follower and the best of the followers of Rasulullah. Right? If we don't do that, then Sunnis have a very valid excuse to have a misunderstanding about what we're all about. And we are actually, by doing this, we are following in the sunnah of Imam Ali himself. When you look at Nahj al-Balagha, look in his rhetoric, Imam Ali is always saying that I'm bringing you back to Kitabullah and the Sunnah of Rasulullah. That is his guiding light. That's his motto. In everything he does, he's never saying something separate or something different. Come to me and follow me. He's always saying, I'm going to help you to follow Kitabullah and Sunnat Nabiyana. Right? So when he's doing that, to follow him, we shouldn't ignore his message and then focus on him as the goal. We should actually take up his motto and make that our motto too. And it's not putting Imam Ali down at all, it's taking his message in its honest reality and practicing it. The same thing happens with Imam Hussein. Sometimes we make him the focus and he becomes the goal, and we forget that he is actually just our link to the Prophet and to the Sunnah of the Prophet. Alright, so when this hadith says that the Sirat Mustaqim in this world is the Imam whose obedience is wajib on you, first of all, we should also recognize that Imam doesn't only mean the Imam that we use the Imam separate from the Prophet. Right? When we say that Rasulullah is the Rasul and Nabi, and then when we talk about Imam, our jargon is Imam means Imam Ali to Imam al-Hujjah. These are Imams, Rasulullah is not an Imam. In our rhetoric, that's how we use it. It's a different thing. Nabi and Rasul is different, Imam is different. But the reality is that Rasulullah is also Imam. He's also an Imam. That's his station. Whenever we're in Majalis, we always talk about this. With Ibrahim alayhi salam, he goes through all these stages, he rises in ranks. The highest rank that he reaches is the rank of Imamah. And so Rasulullah also has that role of Imam, leader of all humanity. And so he is the first Imam. So when it's talking about the Sirat Mustaqim being the Imam, it's not ignoring the Prophet and saying, I mean Imam Ali and on. It means the Imam, whoever the Hujjah of the time is, whoever the person is that you're supposed to be following, he is your Sirat Mustaqim. He's the manifestation of it, and following him is following this path. That's why Imam Ali can be he's Sirat Mustaqim, Imam Hujjah can be Ibn Sirat Mustaqim. Imam Ali is on the path, and for the people of his time, he is the path. And of course, that means that Rasulullah is the path during his time. But that's implicit, it's not stated out loud. We have to say that part out loud to reaffirm that for ourselves, make sure we also have our deen laid out properly, and definitely for the rhetoric of other people, the benefit of other people, we should make sure to speak that part out loud. Alright, so this hadith helps us to see that unity of the two sirats. This sirat in the dunya it's the path, it's Islam. Whatever Rasulullah has taught us, whatever the Quran is teaching us, whatever is in the Sunnah of Rasulullah, whatever he has taught himself or he has taught to the Imam, and then it has to be disclosed later, right? Because there could be new things that an Imam later on discloses from what he learned from Rasulullah that was not disclosed at the time of Rasulullah because people weren't ready, or whatever the case might be, or the time was not right. But everything was learned from Rasulullah first, the deen was complete with him, and then it might be disclosed over time. So whatever they have taught us is Sirat Mustaqim. Surah Al-Fatiha itself tells us the alternative. Right? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Then we say صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Right? So these two are, being dal and being maghdub alayh, these are the two alternatives to being on Sirat Mustaqim. Some people are off the path, they're dal, and they might be either innocent, they've been misguided, they're not maybe ill-willed, they might have been seeking truth, but they haven't found it, they're on the wrong path. And they're pursuing a wrong path, and inshallah they will be guided, but they're dal currently. So those are dalleen, people who are misguided, maybe of no fault of their own. But there's some people who are dal and they're what we call muqassir. They're also liable. They're also they're liable for their own misguidance because they have not tried, because they have been arrogant. They have stuck with the inertia of whatever they were born with or whatever the environment tells them, and that makes them resistant to anything else, even if it's truth. But it's truth that's different from what I'm used to. So, النَّاسُ أَعْدَاءُ مَا جَهِلُوا. I'm not comfortable with something new. I'm just going to stick with what I know. That is misguidance, which is also a misguidance you're liable for. And when you're liable for it, you're knowing the truth and rejecting it, then this is unacceptable. Allah will be angry with you. You're maghdub alayh. Right, so these are forms of misguidance. Sometimes people are ill-willed and misguided. Sometimes people are maybe innocently unguided, not on the right path. Those are deviant ways that we don't want to be on. The path that we do want to be on is we want the path of the prophets, our prophet, his successors, and we want to know it. That means we have to learn it, we have to be engaged in learning it, and then we have to follow it as well. The theory of Sirat Mustaqim is not good enough. We have to know what it's about and what kind of life I need to live, but then actually taking the steps on the Sirat are important. Right? You study the map and plot out your route, and you know exactly where to go and where the traffic is and where the police police traps are. That doesn't help unless you actually get in the car and go and do something with that. It's useless knowledge to have theory of the map and theory of the way. The whole thing is to actually go on the path that you've now charted and said this is the right path. Now you get in the car and you go. That's the goal. So then that's the key for the sirat in the hereafter. It's described as being adaqu min ash-sha'r or sha'ra and ahaddu min as-sayf. It's a bridge over Jahannam that is thinner than a strand of hair, sharper than the edge of a sword. The way to cross it is not by having good balance and physical prowess. The way to cross it, the way to be firm-footed on that, is to follow the sirat in the dunya. To have strong beliefs, to have good practice, good attitude towards Allah and towards your own servitude to God. And those are the keys. The stronger we are in those things, then the better we will fare on that sirat, and we will be able to, inshallah, cross with firm feet on the sirat into Jannah and not slip. The sirat is, it's long. Some ahadith describe it in terms, they don't use distance, they use years, and not only years, thousands of years. The distance between the first stop and the second stop, hadith will say is 1,000 years to get from this to this. And then from this to this is, it's like when you talk about astronomical distances, you say light years. So it's like so far and so such a distance that they start using time to plot out the distance. What happens on this sirat? Is it just a straight shot and whoever, if you don't step the first couple of steps, you're good, you can go? There are different stations, different stopping points on the sirat. The one hadith gives us a sense of two of those stops. This is from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Abu Dhar narrates this from him. He says, Rasulullah says, "Hafat as-sirat يوم القيامة الرحم والأمانة. Hafa is like the two ends, janiba, the two sides maybe. So other ahadith, they give us other stops along the way. It seems like maybe this is the first and the last, the two ends. So the two stops at the end, one is rahim, kin, relations, blood relations, and one is amana, trustworthiness, being, whether you're conscientious or not, in guarding trusts that are entrusted to you. So when each person goes through this, the stopping point of rahim, then their life practice of salatul rahim and qat'ur rahim is examined. Right? Connecting with family members and cutting off from family members. So the Prophet says, فَإِذَا مَرَّ الْوَصُولُ لِلرَّحِمِ الْمُؤَدِّي لِلْأَمَانَةِ نَفَذَ إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. So if you reach these stopping points, these waypoints, and you are wasul lil-rahim, meaning you do salatul rahim, you did salatul rahim well, actively. The main thing is your attitude, right? The judgment or the standard is not, did you, for instance, connect with every single family member? That's not a practical, standard. How, at what point do you demarcate family members, right? That could potentially be an infinite number of people if you keep on going to more and more distant relatives. So that's not the standard. The standard really is, what's your attitude towards family, right? And then to the extent that you can, then how do you practically act on that? So if you're understanding a family, you understand that Allah is the one that has placed you in a family. He's the one who's chosen this family for you. That makes it sacred. Good or bad, whoever they are, it doesn't matter whether they're good people, bad people, all those things. That's not relevant. What's important is that Allah has chosen this family for me. And so I have to honor God's choice, God's placement of me in this family. And for instance, if I have an attitude that, well, I didn't choose my family, so there's nothing important about them. I've chosen my friends. I have people that I have a lot in common with. They actually are more uplifting, better people. So I'm going to discard my family and cut ties with them, and let me connect with people who are better. The underlying premise is that I know better than God what's good for me. I'm going to make conscious choices, a conscious choice to connect with people as family and consider them my family whom Allah didn't choose for me, and I'm going to cut off ties with people whom Allah did choose for me. So I know better than God. Right? So that underlying premise is so blatant, so terrible. If that's my attitude towards family, then there's something deeply wrong with my understanding of Allah and His wisdom and His creation and how He manages things. So that has to be fixed first. That is actually one of the important lessons in Surah Al-Ahzab. And Surah Al-Ahzab, it begins with this idea of adoption, right? Someone who you have adopted. I'm forgetting the verse right now. Anyway, so أَدْعِيَاؤُكُمْ أَبْنَاؤُكُمْ. What is I can't remember the beginning of the verse. Shaykh, can I do? Anyway, so it starts out talking about adoption, and that if you've adopted a child, then this is not your child, he's the child of his own father. Right? And so changing that and saying, no, he's now my son, he's now my child, this is part of this qat'ur rahim, this rearranging, that I can make my own decision for who is my son and who's not my son. I can change lineage through, for instance, legal adoption. That is a system we have now in this country, where you can legally adopt someone, and then that person is your son, your child. He takes on your last name, and for all intents and purposes, he's your child. Inheritance, everything follows. And so the Quran puts its foot down and says, no, this is not the case. So after this, for instance, Zayd ibn Muhammad became known as Zayd ibn Haritha, because he was adopted by the Prophet. People knew him as Zayd ibn Muhammad because in that culture, if you were a da'i, if you were an adopted son, then you would be called by your father's name. Right? Miqdad ibn Aswad is how he was known until this time. And then because he was adopted by Aswad ibn Abdi Yaghuth, who was one of the mustahzeen of the Prophet, one of the people who mocked the Prophet. But when this verse came down, he went back to being calling Miqdad ibn Amr by his father's name. Right? So this is an important lesson in Surah Al-Ahzab, and the practical ramification then, once I understand and have the right attitude towards family, then I have to do my best to connect with people, stay connected with them in whatever way I can. So the attitude has to be there, and then socially, through communication, through invitation, through visiting, through gift giving, through looking out for their needs and trying to solve them and fulfill them. So all those things that we can do for family members, then we have to do those kinds of things. And if we don't, then we'll fail. Because we failed on the sirat in the dunya, then when we reach that particular waypoint on a sirat, just a sirat in the hereafter, then we will be held up. And because we fail there, then we will slip from that point on, and we will be cast into hellfire, at least for a time. It depends on your faith. If you had strong faith and you had the correct faith, you believed in your imam and these kinds of things, then it might be temporary, but we don't want to gamble with temporary in hellfire. The other critical waypoint was amana. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. So one of the Quranic principles is that Allah commands us to return amana, trusts, to their rightful keepers. Someone entrusts me with something, somebody gives me something, I have to honor that, I have to give it back to them. And that expands even more. If I'm told a secret and told to keep the secret, I can't disclose the secret, that would be betraying that trust. If I'm speaking a falsehood, I'm misrepresenting myself or misrepresenting things. That's also a violation of amana and trust. So there's so many manifestations of breaking a trust. Those would all make us liable on the sirat and make us crash from that point on. All right, recite wa salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All right, I think I'll close there. This reflection for me was very beneficial. Thinking about death and thinking about all these different events. Part of the job that we have to do is to clarify these concepts, understand what the Quran and what the hadith of Ahlul Bayt say. So correcting our theoretical understanding of these things is important. And then to have spiritual benefit, we need to actually think about these things and be reminded of these things, remind ourselves, reflect on them. So that is the practical part on an ongoing basis. And the more we can do this, then of course the more we will prioritize the things that will be important for this journey. وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. Taqwa is the zad, the provisions that we need for that real journey, that journey ahead. And so we'll be conscious with building taqwa within ourselves, following Sirat Mustaqim, learning the Quran, learning the Sunnah of the Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt, and then incorporating that into our lives, inshallah. Allah, we ask you to shower your mercy and blessings on Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Help us, Allah, to learn from the Quran, learn from Ahlul Bayt, keep the remembrance of death alive in our hearts, and help us to, inshallah, prepare in this life and stay on the Sirat Mustaqim in this life so that we can smoothly cross the Sirat in the hereafter. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام على الأئمة الهادين المهديين السلام على جميع أنبياء الله ورسله وملائكته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته